With me today are President Pro Tem of the Norwich City Council, Joseph DeLucia, who's also a member of the School Building Committee, and Republican Alderwoman Stacy Gould, also a member of the School Building Committee. So, and of course, I am Mark Thettencourt, the chairman. I figured I did want to spend a few minutes talking about the history of the project because, I mean, I know some of us have heard something, that this thing was like put together in secret or whatever, and that's certainly not the case. So I guess this is the third iteration of having to, deal with the subject matter. So we've had two facility review committees, one that didn't come up with the project that could be supported, and one that came up with basically the outline of what we're going to talk about tonight and what's going to referendum. So that report came out in 2019. Joe and Stacy, you were both on that committee. So, and if we could just, from a common sense perspective, why did you, Stacy, we'll start with you. You're on the top of my screen.
Okay.
Did you think that these, doing a project like this was probably the right thing to do? Of course, at that point, we were talking about renovating schools because we didn't really have the architectural information regarding, what we could do and stuff. So,
Right.
what, at that point in time, what were you thinking?
Well, so we looked at all of the schools as a whole, and then we're trying to determine how we could best utilize the existing schools that we had with the land available on the already existing on those sites, um, and renovate the schools to meet the needs of 20th century learning or 21st century learning,
21st. Yeah.
21st century learning um, in the city of Norwich. And at that time, like you said, we didn't have an architect helping us along. This was all, a volunteer committee. And we said, okay, well, what can we do? What should we do? What are the age of our buildings? What buildings really can be reconfigured? What buildings can't be reconfigured?
Right. We basically used the report to the previous committee, at least the report that the architect that they hired to do. So we were working on somewhat outdated information, but I think, I mean, it had, as far as the sites themselves and stuff, the information was accurate and it was stuff that we could use.
Right. And
So
at one point in time, I actually cut out the actual drawings of the schools
I
and
remember,
because they
yeah,
were to scale
yeah,
and said, okay, if we took this school and put this, this other school next to it, do we have the land? Because we never wanted to uh, worry about, well, we have to go out and buy land to build new schools. We didn't want to add that expense to the project.
yeah.
Um,
And then there's always the question of eminent domain and stuff like that. And then
well,
obviously that can be
I
messy.
will tell you that having served on the previous committees, we never discussed that. That
Hmm.
was not an option that we even wanted to try to put forward,
Right.
even though it probably could have been a one-off or no, that was never a discussion of any type of eminent domain. Um, we wanted to use the land that the city already owned. And we
Correct.
looked at other parcels that the city owned that were not being utilized. Um, and I, right from the get-go was a big proponent of putting a school back in Greenville.
Right. So, Joe, from your perspective, I mean, you did a lot of work in that committee on the surveys.
Yes.
So that was a huge contribution. How about, I mean, what do you think, from the survey perspective, all the work that you put in with that, what did you feel that, were the biggest outtakes from that we needed?
Well, the big takeaways were that the parents of the kids who are currently in elementary school recognized that the buildings were in really rough shape, and they were the requests that were being made through the survey when we asked for input were really about the physical plant and much less about the programs. It was clear to us as soon as we looked at those results that the programs that the school system is putting on are maximizing every square inch of the buildings that we have, but our buildings are too small. That was clear as one takeaway. And they were, and again, you're saying, we're looking at we started that effort 4 years ago, and even then, folks were saying that not only are they too small, but they are also inadequate in terms of their condition and the accessibility issues, the equity. Stacy already touched on the fact that the kids from Greenville, which we now know is one of our most densely populated areas for school-age children, does not have a school. Those kids are getting on a bus and they're going all the way across town to the west side to get to their elementary school. And so so part of the survey asked about bus ride times. And again, parents were very vocal about how they felt about that, about how it was unreasonable the amount of time we were asking, young elementary age kids to be on the bus. So it was clear that we needed to make changes. And then we started to hear the fiscal part from central office for Norwich Public Schools. And the fiscal part on the facility side was that they were spending good money, taxpayer money, hand over fist, trying to find solutions to fixing problems in buildings that needed to be renovated. And again, as Stacy said, we were looking at, and you said, Mark, we were looking at, renovating a certain number of schools, and the number was open for debate, and which ones would be renovated were open for debate. But then how did we arrive at this point when we got a professional architecture firm involved, and they pointed out to us how much more advantageous it is for us to build new buildings on the existing properties that we already own as a city, that the reimbursement rate was much more generous and is actually bigger bang for the buck for the taxpayers and for the kids that are in our system. So
yeah,
that's how we got from point A to point B to where we are right now.
Yeah, we'll get more into that as we go along here, but the more specifics. But obviously, so the city council, in its infinite wisdom, created the school building committee in 2020, and of course we immediately get hit with COVID. So like everyone else, that kind of slowed things down a little bit. But we continue to plug along. We obviously did a lot of hybrid meetings, and we actually continue to, when we've had our meetings, we've done, both. So as chairman, I've tried to, do both versions. So hoping for more public participation, but unfortunately, we really haven't gotten that. That's another subject. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a slide on the actual project here. And all right, so this is the actual project that the architect and that came up with based on input from us and what the realistic, I guess, situation regarding the buildings were. Like when we had all talked before with the old facilities review committee, and certainly it was my intention to expand some of the three schools at the top that we're talking about there, Moriarty, Stanton, and Uncas, and then either build a school or do veterans. I think that was the possibility there. That was kind of up in the air that we were going to leave to the building committee, I guess. Something to that effect. Well, my recollection is obviously that when the architect wound up taking a look at all this, we wound up we wound up saying that it would be more cost effective to do the schools as new, because basically because a lot of the schools, especially the older ones, just aren't up to snuff and aren't up to code in any way, shape, or form. So there are some schools, obviously, that right from the get-go had some issues. So just to review what the actual proposal is real quick. So it would replace Moriarty, Stanton, and Uncas with new schools at those sites. That decision is largely driven by the size of the lots in the location. The other piece, which is largely location driven, was that new school that Stacy had talked about. That I think there was certainly no objection in the committee as far as the putting it in that at the old Greenville site. So that's hang on, I'm going to do this here. Here we go. Putting that in at the old Greenville site, the old Greenville school site. So that certainly made some sense. Kelly has already been renovated recently, so we didn't touch that in this proposal. And the other is we're not sure until we get into the nuts and bolts of it and design, as far as whether we're going to build a new middle school or at the site, or do a renovation. I think our original thoughts were to, if possible, to do a small addition and renovate as new, but we'll have to see how that goes. So, but teachers would be included in this proposal. The K Street wouldn't be touched, and ultimately, too, once at the end of the project, Huntington School would turn into a multi-use facility, housing the new central office, nurse, registration tech, adult ed, virtual learning, and whatever else they want to stick in there. Plus, so the other schools may come up with other usage for the school system in one or two cases. Others, I believe, I know Mahan, I think we've talked about the likelihood that the city would probably want to put that back on the tax rolls, and because it isn't a commercial location, then and possibly sell some of the other buildings also. So that's I guess in a nutshell, if I missed anything as far as the project goes.
Well, the only thing that I would add, Mark, is that some of the programs for our special education students are out of the city of Norwich.
Correct.
With these renovations, or with these, brand new schools, some of the programs that they go to out of our city can now be back at the school, because we'll have the proper spacing for those programs.
And we're going to talk about that too, specifically, because that's really part of the whole equation here, what makes this project have some value. So I think as far as down the road operational costs for the Board of Ed and such. So let me bring something else up. I'm going to try to think how we can do this here. So just got to shrink this on you. Not what I wanted to do. There we go. So when we talk about the finances, the cost of when it boiled down, we looked at obviously several options. At least initially, everything was on the table, and then it boiled down to three options, which was a 3 elementary school option, a 4 elementary school option, and a 7 elementary school option, which we termed, do nothing, which isn't really do nothing, but it's because you got to do something. But and then basically not make any changes except to the new buildings, except to the old buildings. So but what we settled on it, I think obviously the three elementary school option would have had three larger elementary schools. And I think there was some, particularly with the educators on the committee, that there was some concern about that. So, and the committee finally settled on the four elementary school, two middle school concept, which would give you I think we were estimating 525 students per elementary school plus the two middle schools, somewhere in that neighborhood. So, in that, the total project cost $381 million. Josh rounded up on the budget referendum question to 385 just in case. But the net cost to Norwich after this school construction grant reimbursements from the state, $149 million. All the projects qualify for construction grants. So now the problem is, and people think that's a large amount of money. Well, it is a large amount of money. But the problem is, what happens if you don't spend that money? So, Joe, you want to take a shot at that?
In comparison to, and the architect labeled this as a do nothing option, but it's very clear, and they made a great point of saying there is not a do nothing option. We will either have to build these buildings according to this plan, to the great degree, all plans are flexible, or we will have to, and I use the word pour because it will be like pouring a bucket of money into the school system, because the existing buildings, if we are to keep them, need significant renovation and repair and reconfiguration.
Right. So, now, I did want to say that this is an older slide that did not reflect inflation estimates on the do nothing option. So that number, when I do have some other data on that, but that number actually goes up when you start considering inflationary costs, which they've calculated into this bond referendum, this project. Those numbers should hold, but that number is $225 million in that neighborhood, I believe, as far as what it would cost us down the road for the do nothing option.
Exactly.
In total dollars.
Right now, the building industry escalation, or the inflation rate, is just from last year to this year is just over 8%. Yep. So when you look at a project that could take 7 years, then yes, that 200 million quickly becomes 225, almost 226 million dollars. That the council, the sitting council, and future councils beyond us will have to find room for in the capital budget, and then allocate those funds to the Board of Ed for the purposes of fixing up these buildings. So the big money takeaway here is that we are in a situation where we are going to have to spend significant taxpayer dollars on our school system. So the question becomes, why not have 4 new elementary schools and a completely renovated middle school to match the quality and the facility that we already have at Kelly, versus spending $225 million to have, repaired and buffed up and polished up versions of the school system that we already have, which we know has other logistic issues, in its current state. Mm-hmm. So that's really that. It comes down to as simple as that, and that's not to be glib or to think that this is a small thing. This is a huge thing. This is the largest investment in not just the school system, but in a single project in the history of the city of Norwich. We know this is not a small thing, but we have arrived at this place, and it's certainly not going to get any cheaper, and it is certainly not going. It is not. I believe, I can only say my belief is that it is not fiscally prudent to spend $225 million on our existing school system, when we can have all of the things that we've outlined in 4 new buildings and a renovated building. And because that kind of renovation, that scale of a project takes us through the next 50 years for the school system in the city of Norwich.
Right. So that's I think pretty much covers it more or less. Stacy, you got anything you want to add?
No, Joe covered it very well. And to his point, if we, and he's right, $150 million is a huge amount of money, but $150 million well spent. We're getting the maximum reimbursement for our new schools, for the city of Norwich, for our students, for future students, for 50 years down the road. And nothing is getting less expensive. And we didn't come to the committee didn't come to this decision lightly.
No, let's face it. We've got different backgrounds in this, and politically. I mean, obviously, Stacy, you're a Republican. I'm a Democrat. Joe's a Democrat. But I mean, the numbers don't lie.
Right.
I don't think it had anything to do with it.
Yeah, there was no politics
whether
really.
There's an R or
yeah,
a D
right,
or
exactly.
a G or an I behind your name.
I just want to make the point that this was, a data-driven decision. That this was this did not have anything to do with politics or anything like that. This is what the numbers are, and this is what we're going to be looking at in the future.
And the committee was not made of elected officials. Yes, there were elected officials who sat on the committee, but there were also people. The citizenry of Norwich came out and said, "I'd like to sit on this committee. I'm interested. This is what I bring to the table."
Right.
And this is what the consensus was of the committee. This is how we got here to this final decision, this program that we're bringing forward, this proposal that we're bringing forward to the taxpayers.
All right, so I just switched to the other look here. Again, this is basically the same information. It has the 2 options, but it shows on the do nothing the inflationary projected cost. So, and these the committee didn't make up these numbers. These came from the architect. I just did want to point that out. We didn't make this up or fudge the numbers or anything. This is what we were given. So certainly we're not in that situation. So,
well, and to qualify that, beyond the architect, this came from the cost estimators who work for a construction company in the state of Connecticut that does this work as their primary purpose. So these numbers are well vetted.
Yep. So I did want to touch on. Let me get rid of this for a second. So I did want to touch on some of the other stuff. So as you know, you probably have seen the explanatory text. So there was a draft that included some other information that didn't make the final draft, and I'm just going to share that. Yeah. I'm going to take us off here. So there were some other there are some other positives here. So we could we certainly will repurpose the schools or put some of the buildings are good candidates to be put on the tax rolls. Others, so there is one thing that has been talked about is the possibility of a community center. Certainly, we want the new schools to be available for use as for their recreation facilities. So I think we've talked about that some in the past. But also I think some of these schools would have some, the old schools would have some availability, on the old sites. And we should be considering the possible uses as a community center. So personally, now that's up to the city council to do something about down the road. So y'all have fun with that. But
But in the meantime, Mark, with brand new schools with properly sized facilities,
Yep,
you could have programs that a community center typically puts on in these schools in the whether it be on a weekend, after school, during vacation. Uh,
absolutely.
we want these buildings to be utilized. I don't want
Correct.
them sitting, vacant for weeks on end. I'd like to see them be used by the people who live here.
Right. So, I mean, one of the things that we did with Kelly Middle School, and I was on that committee, uh, we built an auditorium that was twice as large as what the state was willing to reimburse us for. But the idea being that we can, and to some extent it has been utilized, but I think it could still be utilized, more. But I that's certainly been available for public use and has been used by the public in addition to schools and stuff. Obviously, we're holding city council meetings there right now because of the elevator situation at City Hall. So those kind of things certainly should continue to happen, especially with new facilities. The other piece, go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
Well, I think you're about to say what I'm about to say. The seven of us on the council have also made the commitment, and it's a reason why the next piece is in the text, is that as the new buildings come online, should this project move forward, and we take buildings out of service and return them to the tax rolls, the sale price that the city takes in is intended and committed, according to this text, to offset the debt service for the project.
Correct.
So for the few folks out there who have expressed a concern that, oh, well, you sell them a hand school and then you'll use that to do something else, that, some other pet project, or, to use some of the vernacular. And the answer to that is actually no. We're committing through the referendum that if whatever we sell will be used to offset that $149 million price tag that the taxpayers are taking up. So,
right.
That was a very important point to the seven of us. That be part of the plan.
Absolutely. So I'll point out there's some other operation. The other 3 points have more to do with operations for the Board of Ed, particularly regarding utilities. So certainly, we expect some savings there. I'm thinking transportation costs will decrease, but until they get it down on paper, I'm not positive about that, but I would think that would be the case. Transporting to 4 should be better than transporting to 7, I would think. But the other piece, that third one, is something that we discussed at great length at both the facilities review committee and this committee, was bringing kids back into the school system, which Stacy touched on at the beginning. So obviously that was something we were going to talk about, but that was, I think, a really important piece here, that we bring all our students, or at least as many as we possibly can, back into the fold, so to speak, here in Norwich, because we pay to send those kids out, so.
Well, and the good news is that that's already happening in the district. That is an initiative that was identified by the board, and the superintendent and her staff are already working on that, and they've made great strides. This project would really help to further that initiative and essentially complete that initiative, so that only the smallest number of kids possible would need to be outsourced. Yep. for their learning needs.
So questions you might have heard from the community. So I know, Stacy, we talked before this little meeting. So, some people saying, this work here was done in secret or something like that, So it's been, I think, a pretty open process. Actually, we certainly encourage public participation, but we've been amazed at what little public, input, other than like surveys and things that we aggressively, put out to people. but people actually showing up at meetings and talking about this, really hasn't happened any great deal, and it's kind of disappointing as far as I'm concerned. But I don't know if anyone's got anything to say about that.
How
Certainly,
many
we haven't been doing this in secret, so
right.
that's my point.
No, we haven't done this in secret. We haven't done it in a vacuum. And how many informational sessions did we hold for the public to come out? Now,
Yeah.
all of our meetings were open, and if you wanted to show up and come to a meeting, you could. But we had a lot of informationals that people didn't come out to.
And you could
And
have,
yes,
obviously, it was COVID too, and things like that. So that keeps some people away. But certainly, we had Zoom opportunities and stuff too. So, I mean, this was, Zoom was a
and
staple for us the last couple of years. So,
right. But most of the informationals done were, if I want to call it the post-COVID or
yeah.
late COVID's, you know, time frame, and people didn't show up. So I don't know if we didn't reach them, what media we didn't use to get to them, because it was on Facebook, it was on the radio, it was in the newspaper, it was on the city's website. Many of us posted it on our pages. So I don't know how we didn't reach the people. But yeah, I've been disappointed sitting at those meetings. I've, pulled into the parking lot hoping to see 50 cars, and we haven't.
And I will tell you, I mean, and I purposely put on the agenda, public comment, if any, well, I don't write if any public comment. There's been sections in there, and we've really gotten very little. So except for, a handful of people that showed up at some of these, meetings. We certainly got a lot of input from staff. They were a big part of this. But they can't be, and again, surveys and that kind of activity that were done. But so then I did get one request from a person regarding, I'll just say Mahan in this case, and that's what it was. So whether a particular school could be saved, and I'm sure a lot of people love their particular school. So, like, say Huntington or Mahan or whatever. So it doesn't, the rest were Quantic down the road for me, which I went to back, and I'm 62, folks. I went to. So the hard answer here is a lot of these sites don't, just either their location, their physical size, the way the lot's situated. Like, take Waquanic, for instance. Waquanic's sitting basically on a hill. We have the kindergartners up at another level. There's no way to make that building ADA accessible, which I would have to do by code in a Renovators New project. So that's a problem. All the schools have parking issues. Somebody asked me about Huntington after a meeting one time, or during a meeting, and I'd say, you know what? It'd be great to save Huntington as a school, but where the heck are you going to park? So, I mean, that school has a problem now with parking, though at this size. Never mind trying to expand it, and there's not a lot of area to expand it either. So these are the logistics that we have to consider, and this is honestly why we kind of fell back into the architect fell back into the whole, build new schools thing, because obviously it's just easier to site these at a different location, or at the same locations as a new building, and deal with those issues. So,
right. And I think people have to understand that the architects fully vetted all of the schools, looking at, okay, what's the building size? What's the land size available? If we have to build a new playground, where are we going to put that? These were all fully vetted. This was not, oh, we didn't draw names out of a hat.
Yeah,
including
we
the
really
accessibility issues too.
Yeah,
right?
the accessibility
right.
issues.
Accessibility issues, parking issues. If we had to do, if you need a bigger playground, where are you going to put it?
Right.
And certainly Waquanic, everybody is fond of their elementary school. Nobody wants to not go to their school anymore. But Waquanic is built into the side of a hill,
Yep.
and there's no place to go. Um, and it wasn't decisions that we necessarily made, but these are the hard truths and the realities of the facilities that we have. Um, but we looked at them as, individual sites and whether they worked or not for moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean that really is the nuts and bolts of it there. Joe, you got anything you want to add?
Well, I
While you're
just
up
want to
this up?
say that we could talk about the individual sites and be on this call for another hour, but the good news is that the Taffel neighborhood is not really having or being ignored, right? Simply because of the fact that
Moriarty is right up the
up
street,
on top of the hill up in
Yeah.
Moriarty. Absolutely right. Our other neighborhoods, I know we talked about Greenville, but we look when you look at Veteran School and the kids who live in the Laurel Hill region, right? Those kids who are not going to Veterans are also going all the way across town to the west side for elementary school. Now they'll be coming down off the hill through the downtown and over to Greenville. So again, we're accomplishing a more I keep using the word equitable, but I would also want to say evenly distributed school system. So we're not stacked to one side of town, and so for the folks who say, well, what about neighborhood schools? I think we're moving closer to a neighborhood type school system with this project than we are right now because of that even more equitable distribution of these 4 new elementary schools. Yes. And again, it can't be understated that we have Kelly is a school that's here and Teachers is a school that's here, just in terms of the facilities, nothing about the programs. And now we're going to have that opportunity and equity and opportunity as well. I mean,
obviously parity was something that was part of the committee discussion. So certainly in doing this project, we'd start fresh. So we can design a school system to be more efficient operationally and also be fair to everybody, as fair as possible anyway. So, I mean, that's the best way. So, I mean, Kelly then would be the older school. So, and which just got renovated, so that's.
And isn't that a nice problem to have?
Yeah, really.
Building as beautiful as Kelly be our oldest school, right?
Yeah. So that's a good thing, I think. So I that's a problem I can live with. So I want to thank you both for coming on. Obviously, you all know me. I've served with you on the city council, and we don't yell at each other very often. Happens occasionally, but hey.
I don't think I've ever yelled at you, Mark.
Yeah, I don't think so. No. So I will tell you, I'm going to compliment both of you because Stacy, I've always, you're kind of old school with the paper and pen and stuff, But man, and your books are legendary,
Yep.
Your binders. So
Yes.
I will tell you, my desktop, I have folders. I save everything electronically. I do the same thing at work for what I can do that with. So I'm a little different, but certainly your work ethic is second to none. I will compliment you on that. So
thank you.
And Joe, of course, you're pretty much in the same boat. You know what the hell you're doing. Your educational background too. I mean, let's face it, you're an educator now, and in the past you've done architectural work and stuff. So you certainly served on a building committee up in, I think, Colchester it was or something.
Yes.
And then yeah.
And the community loves it. I mean, it was painful to get it approved, but the community loves what they got for their money.
Yep.
And I think we could do the same thing here.
I think, and to be honest with you, I honestly look at this as an economic development driver as we go along, because let's face it, what family with disposable income wants to bring their kids into a town with substandard, schools and buildings and stuff? So I don't think you want that. Now we have challenges, obviously, with taxes and stuff, but we're a city, not a town. So we're not a big city, but we have those challenges, and that's stuff we always have to juggle.
Right.
and deal with. I don't. I
And I
know
think,
we could go on, and I don't want to get too long here, so I'll be
well, I
editing
think
half
the
this
one
out.
point, Mark, that we also need to make is the city of Norwich can no longer afford to have all of these elementary schools in the
Correct.
condition that they're in. And that's the
That's
other thing that's driving it.
in logistically, I mean, it's crazy. So it
It's
really
just
is.
too many schools for us to try to maintain.
Yep, absolutely. So,
That that's a great point. And I don't want to look back and 10 years from now and say, gee, well, we had a chance to really make a difference and we fumbled the football. You
yep.
know,
Good job, folks. I will tell you. All right, but I'll just say, just again, thank you both for doing this,
Well,
and
thank
we'll
you
see
for
you
doing
later.
this, Mark.
yeah.
So
Well,
I'll
thank you
let
for leading us to this point, Mark.
Right.
I just facilitated it. That's all. You guys did yeoman's work. I mean, that's why I should sit down here and stuff. So because this has not been a short process.
No.
So and we've been working on this for years, and of course we lived through COVID and everything, and dealt with those issues. So again, thank you both.